Welcome back. Let's now take you to the earthquake-ravaged parts of Turkey and Syria. Major 7.8 magnitude earthquake followed by another strong quake and multiple aftershocks, including one as late as this morning of magnitude 4.3 that jolted Nurzagi district of Gaziantep province of Turkey. And the Monday's quake, of course, has devastated large swathes of Turkey and Syria, killing thousands of people. In terms of rescue, what we are going to in fact put it out for you. Here's a visual of a baby being rescued from Kahramanmaraş in Turkey. Look at how this baby was saved, just a 2-month-old baby. You can see people are chanting prayers with the baby being rescued, even as it is seen sucking the thumb, and the mother also rescued shortly after. This is just one example of many such stories of hope and miracles amidst, of course, the devastation. I'm joined here on the program by Dr. Patricia Martinez Garzon, seismologist, who's joining us today from Potsdam in Germany, and Dr. D. Srinagesh, I beg your pardon, retired chief scientist, former head of seismology from CSIR, NGRI, who's a professor in the Department of Civil Engineering in IIT Madras. Thank you so much for joining me here on the program. Dr. Patricia, if I may begin with you. We are seeing also today, we have accessed satellite images of the devastation of several cities in Turkey. Now, what this tells us, and I am particularly curious about two things. A, that, in a country which comes under an earthquake-prone area, earthquake-prone zone, you still did not have structures that were quake-resistant for so many buildings to collapse, because I imagine the death toll of 11,000 has happened because people have got buried in the rubble. And number two, at this time, in this era also, we are not able to forecast earthquakes. I'm not saying we can avert them, but a forecast would that not have helped us save lives?
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions. So with respect to your first question, as you may know, Turkey is crossed by two large active seismic zones: the East Anatolian fault that was activated in the quakes from last Monday, and also the North Anatolian fault in the northern part, which are both structures that are that provide very high seismic hazard and risk. But it's not; these are not the only zones that are seismically hazardous in Turkey. Turkey is a very big country and is very seismically active. Also, all the western part is very seismically active, and therefore it's almost protecting a very vast portion of the country against seismic hazard and risk. We collaborate with the main emergency authority in Turkey, AFAD, and we know that they make extremely high efforts on trying to protect the population and also trying to enforce that the building codes are followed. But of course, trying to adapt all the structures that have been created much before the building codes were even imposed, it's a different figure. And
okay.
In that respect, the only hope is that with the new buildings that will be built now in these areas that are extremely damaged, this is a new opportunity for implementing the right building codes and the right type of construction.
Yes, let's hope that happens, because it is indeed heartrending to see how families have been devastated, homes have been reduced to rubble, so many lives have been lost. It's a tragedy of immense proportions, and this is the strongest that has happened in this location in a century. And what we understand, Dr. Srinagesh will be able to tell us better, that this was caused because of tensions between Eurasian and African plates in one of the, like I said, geologically active zones in the world. Now, since 1990, and we'll again put out the figures, we've seen that as many as 58 earthquakes in this region, 4 of them with a magnitude of 7 or more, which are considered major earthquakes. 2 large Asian countries were affected by most earthquakes, and these are the countries, like I said, who have that have had the maximum number of earthquakes. India is in that list, and very close to Turkey in terms of the number of earthquakes that these countries have witnessed. Dr. Srinagesh, is there a lack of, policy or a lack of strategy, of application, of innovation? Where are we lacking as a race? Because these are countries across continents that are impacted by some really devastating earthquakes.
The question which you raised is very pertinent to the entire world, and especially where this earthquake has happened. It's a tri-junction of three plates, the Eurasian, the Arabian, and the Nubian plate, and the Anatolian microplate is being squeezed to the west. And as the seismologist from GFZ said so, right. The plate boundaries are demarcated by the North Anatolian fault and the East Anatolian fault. The earthquake which has happened on the East Anatolian fault is after a long time. For the last 7 to 8 decades, they did not have this earthquake. And 9 hours later, we had another earthquake of 7.5 magnitude on a sympathetic fault, which is the same system of the East Anatolian fault. Now, the question coming to the policy of housing, especially the built environment, and the code regulations to be put in. Let us take the geopolitical situation there, and this earthquake has happened in one of the most, what should I say, the area which has been prone for a lot of fighting and all. And second thing, the code enabling which has been decided by the governments need to be implemented in sensu stricto. Then only we can save the lives. And today it's unfortunate to see so many people dying because of the built environment collapse. And this has happened especially because this earthquake happened early in the morning, and that is the loss of life is extremely high. And this is what I think the building codes need to be enforced and regulated in such a way that we can save lives, and as well as the dwellings in which people live, because that is once dreamed to live in a house which is safe from natural hazards.
There are things that need to be done. There is sort of a I should say brainstorming session that needs to be done from the major stakeholders, and perhaps it needs a collective effort. If we look at how India has been impacted, Gujarat, January 26, 2001, the magnitude of 7.7, very similar to the magnitude that we witnessed in Turkey. Again, there were deaths of over 20,000. Figures are on your screens there. Maharashtra, September 30th, 1993, magnitude of 6.4, killed over 20,000 again. In Delhi, October 20th, 1991, magnitude 6.1, over 1,000 people killed. Now, this one in 1950, August 1915, Assam was shaken by an earthquake of 8.6. The deaths over 1,500. Remember, these are again very sparsely populated areas. So while the magnitude is very high, the death casualties may not be reflective of the kind of devastation or damage it caused. Bihar, January 15, 1934, magnitude 8.1, deaths over 19,000. Dr. Patricia, these are figures from our country, which means that India, and since you are a seismologist and you'll have a larger understanding, is quite vulnerable. How do you propose or what do you suggest that we as a country need to do in order to perhaps minimize the damage, that we don't lose that many people?
So I think it's important to raise awareness in the population that India is a seismically active country. And of course, to not alarm the population, but always promote, especially in areas that might be close to seismically active boundaries, right, to always promote that an emergency kits are always at hand and that are yearly updated, so that in case that a real emergency happens, somehow we are prepared for at least the first 48 hours. That will be my first advice on the civilian side. And then, of course, in terms of investment for the country, it's very important to keep investing on instrumentation, on accelerometers, and also on seismometers that can help us having a better understanding of how these faults behave. and whether anomalous seismic activity is being registered, that might mean that the faults are slowly becoming more active and may rupture into a large event.
Right. So, from a layman's perspective, as I understand, you're talking about very close monitoring, greater surveillance, awareness to be created. I hope the policymakers are listening to this. I will take a quick last word on this particular aspect from Dr. Srinagesh as well. Dr. Srinagesh.
In the Indian context, the National Center for Seismology under the Ministry of Earth Sciences has been playing a proactive role in the instrumentation and dissemination of information related to earthquake activity, and also trying to study the earthquake hazard, especially in seismic zones 4 and 5, which is called the microzonation of the cities. So there is a lot of effort which has been carried out by the Ministry of Earth Sciences. The National Disaster Management Authority, which is the sole authority in the disaster management, especially has been doing a lot of outreach programs, especially trying to create drills for when large earthquakes happen. This happened in Northeast, they conducted, and for the 1905 scenario earthquake, like what happened in Kangda, that major drill was carried out in many states, which were abutting the Kangda region, especially in Chandigarh, Himachal Pradesh, and other states, Haryana states, I remember. So, not that the awareness and outreach is not being carried out. This is a concerted effort on the part of the government, both the Ministry of Earth Sciences and others, the state disaster management authorities, both in trying to strengthen the existing seismological networks and chipping in with other government organizations like CSIR, which is working on mission mode projects, especially understanding the earthquake activity and other parameters in Uttarakhand region. So there is concerted effort. Certainly there are policy decisions being taken at the highest level to mitigate earthquake risk. That's what I would like
policy decisions being taken at the highest level to mitigate the impact of earthquakes. Thank you so much, Dr. Srinagesh and Dr. Patricia, especially for joining us all the way from Potsdam in Germany. Thanks very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.